Why is there something rather than nothing? Our existence in the universe is incredibly strange. We usually don't think about it because of our daily routines, but sometimes we stop and wonder, why does anything exist at all? Why is there all this stuff in the universe, and why does it follow such precise laws? We live in a universe with things like spiral galaxies, the northern lights, and SpongeBob SquarePants. As Sean Carroll notes, nothing about modern physics explains why we have these laws rather than some totally different laws, although physicists sometimes talk that way. A mistake they might be able to avoid if they took philosophers more seriously. As for the philosophers, the best that they can come up with is the anthropic principle, the notion that our particular universe appears the way it does by virtue of our presence as observers within it. However, this explanation can feel like a circular argument and doesn't fully satisfy our curiosity. Is our universe real? This is a classic question posed by philosopher René Descartes. It asks how we can know if what we see around us is real and not an illusion created by an unseen force. Descartes called this the evil demon. Today, this question is often discussed as the brain in a vat problem or the simulation argument. It's possible that we are part of a complex simulation. A deeper question might be whether the civilization running our simulation is also in a simulation, leading to a chain of simulations. We might not even be who we think we are. If the people running the simulation are also in it, our true identities could be hidden to make the experience seem more real. This puzzle makes us rethink what we mean by real. Some philosophers, called modal realists, argue that if our universe seems logical and coherent, then we have to consider it real. Or maybe, as the character Cypher said after eating a piece of simulated steak in the Matrix, ignorance is bliss. Do we have free will? This is also known as the dilemma of determinism. We don't know if our actions are controlled by some external influence, or if we are truly free to make our own decisions. Philosophers, and now some scientists, have debated this for thousands of years with no clear answer. If our decisions are influenced by an endless chain of events, then determinism is true and we don't have free will. But if the opposite is true, called indeterminism, our actions must be random, which some argue is still not free will. On the other hand, some philosophers called libertarians argue for compatibilism, the idea that free will can exist alongside a deterministic universe. This problem gets more complicated with neuroscience showing that our brains make decisions before we are even aware of them. If we don't have free will, then why did we evolve consciousness instead of zombie-like minds? Quantum mechanics adds another layer of complexity by suggesting we live in a universe of probability. As Linus Vepstus has said, consciousness seems to be intimately and inescapably tied to the perception of the passage of time. And indeed, the idea that the past is fixed and perfectly deterministic, and that the future is unknowable. This fits well because if the future were predetermined, then there'd be no free will, and no point in the participation of the passage of time. Does God exist? Simply put, we cannot know if God exists or not. Perhaps both atheists and believers are wrong in their absolute claims, and the agnostics are right. True agnostics, following the thinking of Descartes, recognize the limits of human knowledge and understanding. We don't know enough about the universe to make any definite statements about whether a prime mover or creator exists. Many people believe in naturalism, the idea that the universe works on its own without any divine influence. But this doesn't rule out the possibility of a grand designer who started it all. This idea is called deism. We might even be living in a simulation controlled by advanced beings like hacker gods. Or maybe the Gnostics are right, and powerful beings exist in a deeper reality we're unaware of. Is there life after death? Before getting excited, this doesn't mean we'll be playing harps on clouds or shoveling coal in hell forever. Since we can't ask the dead what happens after death, we're left guessing. Materialists believe there's no life after death, but that's just an assumption that can't be proven. When we look at the universe, or multiversities, whether through classical physics or quantum mechanics, there's no reason to believe we only get one life. It's a question of metaphysics and whether the cosmos, what Carl Sagan called all that is or ever was or ever will be, works in a way that life is infinitely recycled. Hans Moravec explained it well with the quantum many worlds interpretation, saying that we must always find ourselves alive and observing the universe in some form. Can you really experience anything objectively? There's a difference between trying to understand the world objectively and actually experiencing it in an entirely objective way. This is the problem of qualia, the idea that we can only perceive our surroundings through our senses and minds. Everything you've ever touched, seen, or smelled has been processed through your senses and thoughts. So your experience of the world is unique to you. For example, how you see the color red might be different from how someone else sees it. The only way to know for sure would be to somehow experience the world from another person's perspective, like in the movie Being John Malkovich, which isn't something we'll likely achieve anytime soon. In other words, the universe can only be observed through a brain, or possibly a machine mind, which means it can only be interpreted subjectively. But since the universe seems to be coherent and understandable, should we assume its true objective nature can never be known? Interestingly, much of Buddhist philosophy focuses on this idea, called emptiness, which is the opposite of Plato's idealism. What is the best moral system? Basically, we can never fully determine what actions are truly right or wrong. Throughout history, philosophers, religious leaders, and politicians have claimed to find the best way to judge human actions and create the most just code of conduct. But it's never that simple. Life is too complex for a universal morality or absolute ethics. The golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated, is a good idea, but it ignores individual moral choices and doesn't account for justice, like punishing criminals, and can even be used to justify oppression. Immanuel Kant was a strong critic of it. It's also too simple for more complicated situations. For example, should a few people be sacrificed to save many others? Who has more moral worth, a human baby or an adult great ape? Neuroscientists have shown that morality is influenced by culture and psychology. The trolley problem and some head-scratching ethical dilemmas illustrate this well. Watch this video for more. What are numbers? We use numbers every day, but if we think about it, what are they really? And why are they so good at explaining the universe, like with Newton's laws? Mathematical structures include numbers, sets, groups, and points. But are these real objects, or just ways to describe relationships that always exist in any structure? Plato argued that numbers were real, even if you can't see them. But formalists said they were just formal systems, well-defined ideas based on math. This is an ontological problem, where we are confused about the true nature of the universe and which parts are human-made concepts and which are real.